So what's up, Full Fire Gamers? It's your boy, Cameraman Dave, back again, commentating over one of our RCQ games. This was the top 8 game, Living End on your left, piloted by Viner, and Boros Energy on your right, piloted by Sam Price. So, starting off with a polluted delta from the Living End player, left uncracked, whereas the Energy player going straight for that arid mesa by the looks of things. Probably just going to get Sacred Foundry, so down to 17 for the energy player. And presumably you're going to see Goddess Souls, Regavan, Ocelot Pride, one of the, pick your poison there. Not that card, but pick your favourite one drop. And yeah, Ragavan, probably the best one drop to see versus Living End, because it sets you to a mana advantage, and they have a slightly tougher time of dealing with it than your traditional sort of control or mid-range or any sort of those, any sort of normal deck that doesn't have a restriction of playing anything less, more than 3 CMC. CMC 3 or more even, sorry. But yeah, so that'll put you at a great mana advantage, and you're not really looking for the cards. Like in some matchups, Ragavan's great for finding the cards, but this matchup is great for running the mana advantage. Living End does has ways to kill it for cheap. There is a Harvester of Misery. I'm not sure if that's on the board or in the main. So just surveilling over Rakshas's Bargain. New tech from the Dragon Storm Tark here. Speaking to Viner after the game, he wasn't the biggest fan of it. But let's see how it does for him today. So another polluted delta from the Living End player and just another pass. So these first couple of turns for the Living End player is really just all about setting up and getting ready to enact their game plan. Ideally, this turn we're looking at maybe a couple of cyclers, setting a board up. So gonna surveil before the Ragavan trigger, I believe. To be honest, I'm not a fan of this. If this is what it is, yeah. So the idea is to put something bad on top for a Ragavan, but truthfully, there's not much that they're going to be able to cast that's going to be relevant. Maybe an endurance, but there's no double green. Yeah, I think it's just better off to let Hedge Maze actually turn your draws live versus just stopping Ragavan from getting something. And like you saw there, I'm not sure why that's been left on top. I would have put that to graveyard, because again, setting up for a Living End. But it really depends on what you're looking for. So I'm going to fetch away with the Arid Mesa. So 3 mana from the energy player's side here. This could be Pyro, this could be Flage, this could be Fable if they're playing Fable. Not every deck is. So let's see what they lead on here. Probably Pyro. And no, Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Fable of the Mirror Breaker is okay. But, yep, we're just going to see the Force. Just going to respect that Fable there. It is a 2-for-1. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to leave a body after your Living End, because you're going to want a Living End earlier. So, shock overgrown team here. Sorry, excuse me. And just taking it nice and slow. I'm guessing trying to be more of the control deck. And flash and endurance. That's tough. That's tough for the living. That's tough for the Boros Energy player. Just going to make him shuffle in those Arid Mesas. And this is something that you really. This is something that you really can't you have to respect as the Boros Energy player a lot of the time is that this living end deck isn't just going cycle living end. Like that's the old living end. New living end is interactive. Its creatures are castable. It has a bunch of free permission. And I've spoken to Vino about this deck as well. Like I believe that New Living End is very interesting and actually almost feels like what I'd call a real deck. In the sense of it actually interacts with the board state rather than Old Living End, which didn't do that. But we see a Guardian of Pride here. You know, classical little synergy here. Going to make a big board. Um, and this is unfortunately for Viner threatening because this is mostly self-sufficient. If he gets enough energy, he can fly the cat, but that actually won't matter because endurance has reach. Because why not? So just gonna forest cycle that generous Ent. Gonna go get underground mortuary. And presumably we're going to see some surveilling action. No, shot watery grave. Interesting. So I presume we're going to go for a cascade now then? Judging by that? No. Okay, interesting. Not sure why we couldn't hold up the land there in that case if we're not playing it right then and there. But like I say, I am not the living end expert. I am merely a lowly scrub who plays Mox Opal decks, much to everyone's chagrin. So just a little bit of thinking from the energy player's side here. So just wondering what he's going to do because he doesn't really want to commit to this. This is the perpetual problem with energy versus living end. You don't want to overcommit to the board because your opponent can just basically search their deck for a sweeper. You want to have like a mix of stuff on the board and stuff in the yard, ideally, but that can be tough to do. So that's why you're leaning on your pyros, you're leaning on your fables. Stock up your graveyard so you're not just like your opponent's getting back 17 creatures and you're getting back nothing. Static prison there. The removal of choice, presumably just to continue pressuring with this current board state rather than having to commit further. Because that static prison will stay. I see a force of negation there. We're just going to hard cast that. Presumably, I'm guessing the last card in hand is going to be Shardless Agent. Something like that. Or maybe not. Maybe we're just setting up for a living end. Oh no, we know the last card is an underground mortuary, which we did see off the island cycle, the forest cycle. So I think if the energy player can put another removal spell on deck here, then it's going to be tight. So just a little bit of thinking again from the energy side. He was really leaning on that removal spell in order to clear the way to keep pressuring with the current board. But now I think he's going to have to commit a little bit more. Okay, no, not another removal spell. Goes down to 1 energy. Thank. So we had 2 previously from the Ocelot Pride and the Cat. So swinging in for 3 here, gaining a life. Gonna get a cat. Gonna get an energy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That'll be 8. So nowhere near the city. Well, not nowhere near, but not at the city's blessing as of yet. Need another 2 permanents or 1, and then the trigger. So there's the underground mortuary, like we said. Milling over a flare of denial. So between flare of denial, force of negation, endurance, subtlety. Like I sort of touched on earlier, this deck can put together a lot of free interaction. Like even here, where they got 1 card in hand and 4 lands, that could quite easily represent a number of creatures. I know Viner's quite high on Fankeeper's Familiar as sort of an interaction piece and a creature threat, a bit like Mystic Snake in a sense. But it's slightly better because it also surveils as well instead, and it can destroy enchantments and makes a dinner, feeds the kids for you, and put them to bed. So another land here from the energy player, and again, just trying to pressure with the. Okay, so we're just gonna play a pyro, gain a life. Looks like we're drawing 2 cards off a pyro, not discarding anything unless I can't see the hand. Yep, so that was the last card in hand. Draw 2. We see a bombardment picked up there. I think that's probably going to be all she wrote. So he's making one of the cats a 3/3. Just a heads up play to if you have interaction, you're not also getting my pride. Because that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, between all the shocks and the fetches, Viner should be at a relatively low life total now. So just going to go get Kitty's Blessing. And there we are. We see it scoots up. Like we said, a bombardment was going to be the death knell for that. So we're into game 2 now. And Living End is on the play, starting with a tapped over Green Tomb. And we're going to start with Surveil Lines. So quite a slow start for both players. The Surveil Lines are really, really great in this matchup for the energy player because they want to be able to start milling stuff over early and often. So first Overlord comes down, is going to get the Forest Cycler, which again is another integral part of this Living End deck that lets them play such a low land count. I think they play something like 15 or 16 lands, because they can afford to, with all the cyclers, just afford to get away with it. And Overlord of the Bailment does again form part of this package of reasonable decks because it's slow. After a few turns, you do get there. But Modern is starting to take that many turns, especially when you get into these mid-range versus like mid-range decks, stuff like that. Okay, leading on Ajani, turn 2. Maybe not the best 2-drop just to see, on its own on the rip, but you certainly could do worse. I'm guessing about subtletying this maybe. Okay, we're invoking endurance. I think we're going for a quick Living End here, which is sort of what you really want to do in this matchup, is just Living End for just a little bit, just enough to get some pressure on the board, clear up their pressure. and like getting back an endurance, getting back a living end. Um, Target himself with the endurance again. Maybe he wouldn't have done that. Maybe he would have chose to target my opponent, just on the fact that yes, I flush a living end back into my deck, but if I'm playing around getting another living end, then I don't want him to get an Ajani, which is going to represent two bodies. So Overlord trigger then picks up a Brazen Borrower. So let's see how far these two creatures can go. Don't get me wrong, he's put quite the board state together here. And Raven Charm destroying the Overlord, Flare sacking the Shardless Agent. Absolutely not. You're taking 8, mate. So and here we see them get in, getting a lot of Shardless Agents in the grave. I think that is literally all Shardless Agents is the only options. Maybe like a Forest Cycler is another option. Don't get to see what was taken there. So energy players, I think, down to 10 here. Okay, another Overlord, milling a living end. Just 4 cards, please. I don't know if that's alright with you, mate. Presumably going to pick up that Harvester there. Or maybe you leave it in depending on what you're going for. You got a lot of Shardless Agents. Yeah, taking the Harvester. So just making sure that whatever creature they play, as long as it's small enough, it's getting neutered. No Guide Pride shenanigans, no Ragmans, what have you. So can the energy deck pull back here and get some answers? Remains to be seen. So just to pass here for the living end players, so not the living end, the energy players. So interesting. Not really. Maybe another Fraven Charm. I presume you're probably bringing in your extra copies. And yeah, that's what we see. Another Fraven Charm here, leveled at the Overlord of the Baelmach. Now, it's not a terrible use of it, but it's not the position you really want to be in with these Fraven Charms. You want to be setting up a board state and then holding it up, as like a gun to the living player's head that they can't really interact with too well outside of their free permission. So all the best permission. But just getting in with endurance here, I think putting the energy player down to 7 or thereabouts, and just gonna pass it back. These overlords are about to be coming off of suspend sooner rather than later, so really putting the energy player in the position of you're gonna have to do something at some point. You can't just keep stopping me. You need to set your own board state up. So 3 mana and then Pyro. Yep, fantastic. I mean, he's got stocked hand here, so we're gonna. Okay, Bombardment Flaged. Really interested in what the other card in his hand was. To not discard a creature here, but you know about Harvester of Misery. Um, in hand for the opponent. So he's just going to make some elementals. Presumably going to go find a surveil land here, or maybe a basic if you want to, if you're worried about Blood Moon. It is something to maybe be concerned about, but you can't find. I think it was a verdant catacomb, so you can't even find blue. Looks like he's got basic swamp. Probably would want basic island, basic forest as your sort of backbone, and then the swamp as additional is nice. So unfortunately, can't really play around Blood Moon here very well. So 3 mana, flash in Brazen Borrower, and then pass back. So interesting scenario here. If the Living End player does want to cast a titular card, is they probably don't want to actually attack with Endurance because it's going to give them the opportunity to block with Season Pyro. And although that's a terrible block for any normal scenario, when you've got 2/1/1 elementals, makes a lot more sense when you're considering Living End. So just in the tank here, because once these overlords come off suspend, you're not actually massively incentivized to Living End anymore. And looks like we are going to see an attack with Endurance. Okay, so just going to check the Elemental token underneath. Like, it's difficult because you want to make your Living End better from your energy player side, but you also don't want to just throw away resources. So it's tough. It is tough. I would have liked to see a block there on with the Season Pyro, just to set up and disincentivize your opponent from a Living End, because it means you're going to get back a Johnny, it means you're going to get back Flage, it means you're going to get back a Season Pyro, which is basically you're getting Season Pyro and a Johnny back and a Lightning Helix. So it's pretty not your opponent's not incentivized to Living End. I think just trying to work out if this Brazen Borrower can go the distance here, and I would probably say probably not. Yep, so Harbour of Mystery on the Elemental, and then Shardless Agent for a Living End, presumably. So yep, so Living End gets back a bunch of stuff. Shoots Halo Forager with Flage. He could have also killed Overlord here with Harvester, because Harvester's coming in and -2, -2 and everything. So all these Shardless Agents are going to meet their creator. But ultimately, I really don't think it's largely academic whether you kill an Overlord or something. So probably going to get back Halo Forager, presumably. Or Brazen Borrower, even, probably. So yeah, so just putting together an absolutely Incenado board state here, and yep, there we are. See it scooped up. So we're into game 3 now, and it's all for all the marbles. I'm going to start with a just tapped Sacred Foundry. Looks like an okay hand for the Living End player. See a couple of cyclers of Force and Negation. Maybe a Brazen Borrower. I'm not sure if that's 2 cyclers and a Brazen Borrower or 1 cycler. So it's just Scion Polluted Delta. And then Energy player responds in kind, cracking their marsh flats, presumably finding basic planes, which they do. Lovely little pixel land there. Can't say I hate it. Can't say I love it. Not that my opinion really matters. So presumably we're going to see some sort of 2-drop here, and am I still in game 2? What is this? This is a Johnny on turn 2 yet again. So making that cat, which I don't know if people know this, says the words unblockable on it. Not that it actually does, but Johnny basically says cats you control have unblockable. So gonna get the hedge maze here, just setting up. I've said it before in previous videos, and I'll say it again. These surveil lands are so very good in modern. I think they were sort of underrated when they were first revealed. Like you're not gonna put a tap land in your deck until you realise that it basically does say draw a card. So Verdant Catacombs pass. And okay, this could mean a number of things here, to be honest. So just getting in for 3 here. Sorry. Okay, gonna see a Verdant Catacombs cracked. Maybe this is gonna be a Harvester of Misery, or something else. Maybe. Not really sure why you would go so hard for the Harvester, but yeah, I think it's gonna use that Brazen Borrower that we saw earlier. Bounce the cat. The cat does not die. It does not. It doesn't. It does cease to exist. However, Johnny doesn't see metaphysical apparitions leaving. It only cares if the creature died. So Spyro here, and we're not talking about the last dragon. Seeing what we're gonna get. Yeah, 2/1/1. So Sky Flage, I believe. Which you can't feel too bad about getting those both back from a Living End, but the sad thing, which is what we saw last game, they don't care if they come from the graveyard. They only care that they stuck around, that they were escaped. Sort of the just reanimate it. So Island for Vino here, and yeah, let's see what he can do. This he could just cast Brazen Borrower here, but I think that's a really weak turn. Especially when you're facing down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 damage. So I'm gonna take 5 here. It's quite the stake now. And tapping 2. Ajani number 2. Yikes! Ajani number 2. No bombardment, but we do have a red permanent. So gonna cycle that Kyoto of Mysteries. Which then we cycle another one. So probably just looking for like a subtlety or something. And Ajani resolves. So announce the trigger for the cat, and the trigger for it flipping due to the legend rule. So Just gonna have a little think about it, about how we want to use our Ajani here. So obviously starts on 3. So are we making cats and dealing damage and pushing damage, or are we doing something else? Like a +2 to set up for a -4 is not too bad. And that's what we see. And opponent, that's tough. The energy player has forgotten, even though they've declared their trigger, they've forgotten to get the token, and then they've both forgotten all about it. Unfortunately, because like I sort of said before, as long as you announce the trigger, you don't have to get the stuff right away. You just need to be able to acknowledge that the trigger happens. But yeah, so endurance is going to say bye bye to their graveyard, and presumably we're going to see a living end here, which is what we've been setting up for. Just need to make sure that the graveyard was clear before we did that, and yep, here we are, living end. So it looks like we're going to go get a surveil land from the energy player, just to see if we can mill over something tasty into the yard. Not too bad, nice heads up. I would actually, and this is going to sound really stupid, let the cascade part resolve first and make sure it is actually living end. Just because in the rare event your living end players brought in something spicy like rhinos or inevitable betrayal, not that they probably would in this matchup, but just take your edges and let them put the spell on the stack. Um, Unless you're looking for something that says counter target activability, but I don't know how you're doing that in red and white. Um, and you'd also need to draw it as well, so I think it's asking a little bit too much there, but just spinning around for that living end. There it is. Like we expected. Board goes to Jesus. And we get some 4/4s and an endurance. Endurance putting, just in case there was any sort of query, no, you're not having a graveyard. Absolutely not. I won't allow it. So just having a quick read of Ajani, because not often we see him plus, and it's not often we see him minus. It's usually 0, 0, 0, 0. So yep, there's the quote unquote ultimate. Oh no, no. Oh. Okay, so Ajani says that for those of the uninitiated that you each opponent chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, or a planeswalker and a planeswalker they control from among the non-land permanents they control. They then sacrifices the rest. You could have kept a Shardless Agent there because it is in fact an artifact creature, so you get to choose choose it for artifact, then you choose another creature, and then if you had it didn't in this scenario, but if he did an enchantment creature, then you'd be able to do that as well. So he's going to attack down Ajani here with the Sphinx, and then play Land Pass. So nicely playing around Blood Moon here in the face of Ragavan. And we're just going to see a fetch here, probably again for another Surveyor land. These energy decks are usually playing 2. And there it is, another Elegant Parlour. Just having a look on what's top. And he likes what he sees. So he's keeping that one around. And we see a see off the top. little bit annoying for the energy player because you would have liked to seen some in. Because you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. You pretty much could have cast any one pipped spell there, so subtlety probably was the worst one to see. Then maybe another land here. Tap Sacred Foundry. Interested to see if we're going to see the card he kept on top, or if we're just sort of maybe something nice. Spyro again. Discard a Ragavans. I see a Bombardment picked up and something else. Can play the Bombardment now if he wants to. I don't think the going gets much better on that, to be honest. You do have to think about Fangkeeper's Familiar to destroy it. And there's a Bombardment. And there's a Force. Absolutely not. Get directly to fuck. So, I think we're just waiting, deciding whether we want to play a 1-drop here or not. Whether you want to hard commit into potentially dying to a living end, but it really depends what your 1-drop here is. I think living end player's at 10 here. Not sure what the energy player is at. Haven't been keeping track of life totals. I'm terrible. Sorry, we're on the living end player's turn here, so I didn't realise. Pay more attention. So energy players just announced he's at 13, so 13 plays 10, which Viner is currently losing the race on. He's facing down 5, and he's only presenting a 4. So 2-turn clock for the energy player here. Let's see if Viner can pull something out of the bag here. Maybe another living end. And Halo Voyager. And he's got a 0. Get back a living end here. Pick him up, pick him up. Just sort of swapping a Spyro here for an elemental for an Ajani and a cat. And Endurance is going to put so just sort of setting out for another board state. And Spyro off the top. Can't complain. She certainly could do worse. Maybe just want to hold that flage just to see if you can suck in a block here and maybe kill off a bigger creature rather than just because there's the temptation to just go point it at the thing I can kill. But there's also like we see here the attack to make that flage to basically be a removal spell for endurance rather than shardless. Because that cat is unblockable. You're never ever going to let your opponent flip another Ajani. um, in this scenario. So Ragavan goes to the grave, and living end player goes to 80. Sorry, 8. And there's a real possibility that you could do just dome with Flage, and set up to potentially do it again. Um, but seeing as you've made this play now, um, there is also a world where you could have shot your own Cat Warrior. I just think Flage can target anything. He has any target, so could have. If there is a world in which you potentially could have domed your Cat Warrior, you make a new Cat Warrior, deal your opponent 2 damage, turning them from 8 to 6, and again putting a much bigger clock on them. But I don't think getting rid of endurance is bad here. Um, that was basically largely unremovable past that, and yeah. But I do think Ajani on the ground here really isn't doing a lot other than turning cats unblockable. Um, and then probably to be fair, Ajani then Johnny would have been tacked down. I'm not sure if I like my line too much there, where I'm thinking it through. But looks like we got an Overlord on the Living End player side, just being impended. Then having a deep think about whether we want to attack and get aggressive or whether we want to hold back. You are facing down 4 here. I believe he's at 8, off the top of my head. So it is a 2-turn clock. Picks up something I didn't see. Deep in the tank here. Quite a sort of intense game between the pair of them here. It's been very backwards and forwards. Both players have enacted their game plan, and both players have been stopped by the other. So it's quite a nice back and forth game here. Something you like to see at a top 8 of an RCQ. You don't want to just be an absolute. I mean, I'd say you don't want it to be an absolute slaughter, but I suppose if you're the one being slaughtered or doing the slaughtering. We're getting in the air for 4. Tap Sacred Foundry here. Just filling the deck out. But we're representing things like subtlety, endurance, a lot of stuff we're representing here. I believe that last card in hand was a land, so let's see if there's another card in hand that can do some work. Straight to combat and swing for 4. So, do we block the Shardless Agent here? Which I think we do. Just want to slow that clock right down. And if they do have a way to flip a Ajani here, then at the bare minimum, they're not. If it's not bombardment to flip a Ajani, then they're not getting extra damage through. And the Guide of Souls represents quite a bit, especially if this last card in hand ends up being an Ocelot Pride, but I believe it to be a land, off the top of my head, when I saw it, but I might be wrong. So just going to pass and set Flash in Endurance and exile Jobby to, what's his name, Season Pyro, to gain some life with Guided Souls and make some energy. Does need to actually tap those lands, preferably. It is not free. No such thing as a free meal in this world, I'm afraid. Yeah, there we are. Just realising. Tap too many, I think. Oh, no, that's what that's right. He did have one tapped. But he's still holding up Fraven Charm, which has got to be in your mind here. I think if we see a hard cast Harvest of Misery here, this is GG, no re. So just having a little think here, and like I say, this is very much his prerogative to do so. It's very much either player's game to lose here, so just making sure that we're thinking through. I'm going to go to combat, swing for 4 in the air, keep that endurance as a blocker. Looks like there's a subtlety in hand, so it depends on what opponent top decks here. And it is another Guide of Souls. Really starting to get away from the Living End player here. Lots of and this Guide of Souls is going to represent a third energy, some more life, jumping a token. Like it's a lot. It's a lot to get through here. And once again, we're putting our hero on find another Living End. Big swing here. Ottawa, the soaring city. What a card. And block the Guide of Souls. Not sure that needed to attack there, to be honest with you. But here we are. Brilliant play from Viner there, remembering his reflector, remembering it's a reflexive trigger and you've got an opportunity to respond. So just going up the board now. He's not attacking anymore because this Guide of Souls is sort of putting the life total away from a raceable spot. And Guide of Souls so good they did it again. And we're going to see a subtlety here. Probably going to the bottom that one. Yeah, that's pretty low. It's pretty low impact there. Yeah, I'm starting to say that last card in hand is definitely a land. Because we haven't seen that played at any given point. And I feel if you're an energy player here, you're very much not holding much back. So 7 in the air here. Looking at 4 on the ground. So, So just making sure that he's not going to lose here. I think if you're going to attack, potentially it's going to be with subtlety rather than curator of mysteries or whatever the Sphinx is called. Just to play around like a galvanic discharge or something. But he doesn't have any spare energy right now because he's used it all, I believe, to attempt to fly the cat. So just ticking down the Overlord here, ticking down the clock that says, I'm going to get this 5-5 back. What are you going to do? And looks like an orange chant was picked up for the energy player. Which is obviously a great card against the living end, but okay. Double trouble, toil and bubble. And we're kicking the orange chant. And a flare of the night. Jesus, what an ending to this game. Stop the orange chant. Don't think there's a world in which you've got 7, 10 in the air, 3, 6 on the ground, and then a handshake. Well done. Good job, Viner. Congratulations, and thank you all for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this. It's another one of our full fire uncuts where we're doing a little bit less editing just to get these out. I say quicker, but this was 4 weeks ago now, so what can I say? But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next one.